We received your message and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
And you look at that video and you can just see how exhausted the Guthrie family looks. Obviously understand.
They found DNA. They have suspects. So why is she still missing? An 84-year-old woman was ripped from her home in the middle of the night, and weeks later, the person responsible is still out there. Nancy Guthrie, mother of NBC Today Show host Savannah Guthrie, has vanished without a trace. And now the sheriff is so desperate he is begging the kidnapper on live television. Just let her go. Today we are uncovering the theories investigators are not talking about publicly and what the evidence is really pointing to. Today we are looking at the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie from her home in Tucson, Arizona. We are going to break down what the DNA evidence actually tells us, why the FBI is checking gun purchase records against a specific list of names, and what the complete absence of any vehicle description might mean for where this investigation currently stands. There is a lot to get through, so let's start from the beginning. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She lived alone in the Catalina Foothills, an affluent residential area situated in the northern part of Tucson, Arizona. It is the kind of neighborhood where people know their neighbors, where elderly residents have lived for decades, and where the streets are generally considered safe. On the morning of February 1st, 2026, that sense of safety was broken completely. In the early hours of that morning, a masked individual approached Nancy's home and tampered with her doorbell camera. The FBI later released surveillance footage capturing this moment. The suspect can be seen interfering with the camera, an act that investigators and former law enforcement officials have since pointed to as clear evidence of planning. This was not someone who stumbled upon the property by chance. Whoever approached Nancy's home that morning knew the camera was there and made a deliberate effort to deal with it before doing anything else. That detail alone separates this case from opportunistic crimes and puts it firmly in the category of a premeditated, targeted abduction. Nancy disappeared that same morning. Sheriff Nanos has been direct about this from early on in the investigation, stating that she was forcibly taken from her home. She did not leave on her own. She did not wander off. She was taken. The FBI released the surveillance footage publicly in the hope that someone might recognize the suspect. Based on that footage, the suspect is described as a male standing approximately 5'9" to 5'10" tall, with an average build. He was wearing gloves, a mask, and was carrying a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker backpack. Beyond that physical description, investigators have not been able to say much more about who this person is, and that is where the frustration in this case begins to set in. What strikes many people who have followed this case closely is the fact that despite weeks of investigation, hundreds of investigators working thousands of leads, and despite the area being covered by surveillance cameras, authorities have not released any description of a vehicle connected to the disappearance. In most abduction cases, a vehicle description is one of the first things law enforcement puts out to the public. Doorbell cameras, traffic cameras, neighbors cameras, witness accounts. All of these typically help build at least a partial picture of how a suspect arrived and left. In Nancy's case, nothing of that nature has been made public. Fox News correspondent Matt Finn was among the first to flag this publicly, noting that even with cameras present throughout the area, the public has not been asked to look out for any particular type of car. It is an unusual gap, and it is one that raises questions. Either investigators are deliberately holding that information back to avoid tipping off the suspect, the available footage was not clear enough to make a useful identification, or the suspect arrived and left in a way that did not leave a clear trace on any of the cameras in the area. All three possibilities are worth taking seriously, and we will dig further into them as the investigation develops. What has been confirmed is that the FBI has increased its reward to $100,000 for any information that leads to Nancy's location or that leads to the arrest and conviction of anyone involved in her disappearance. That is a significant sum, and it reflects how seriously federal authorities are treating this case. Reward increases of that size are not routine. They signal that investigators want the public's help and are prepared to make it worth someone's while to come forward. The FBI has also reached out to Mexican authorities as part of the investigation. Sheriff Nanos addressed this directly, stating that they do not currently believe Nancy was taken across the border into Mexico. But the fact that contact was made at all tells you that investigators are not ruling anything out, and they are making sure that if there is any connection to activity across the border, the relevant authorities are already aware and engaged. Back in Tucson, the community response has been significant. The Catalina Foothills is home to many elderly residents, a number of whom live alone, just as Nancy did. Residents who spoke to Fox News described a neighbourhood that has been genuinely shaken by what happened. People who had never thought to lock their doors are now doing so. People who felt entirely safe in their homes are now questioning that. One resident described Tucson as a tight and secure community and said that the national attention the case has brought is something the city simply is not used to. Another resident pointed out that many older people in the area live by themselves, and that Nancy's situation has made that reality feel far more vulnerable than it did before. Outside Nancy's home, yellow flowers have been placed as a show of support and hope. The same gesture appeared on the set of the NBC Today show, where her daughter Savannah Guthrie continues to work. A local florist explained that yellow flowers are traditionally a symbol of hope. It is a small, quiet gesture, but it says something about how many people are holding on to the belief that Nancy will be found. Sheriff Nanos has made clear that as far as he and his team are concerned, this remains a rescue operation, not a recovery mission. The language matters. A rescue operation means they are still working on the assumption that Nancy is alive and can be brought home. 400 investigators are, according to Nanos, actively pursuing thousands of leads. He told reporters that he is going to hold on to faith, and that sometimes hope is all you have. What we know for certain is this. An 84-year-old woman was forcibly taken from her home in broad terms of planning and execution that point to a suspect who knew what they were doing. The FBI has footage of that suspect. They have a physical description. They have DNA evidence, collected from 2 separate locations. And they have a reward on the table that is substantial enough to make anyone with useful information think twice about staying quiet. The question now is whether any of that is enough to bring Nancy Guthrie home. To understand where this investigation stands, you have to understand the evidence. And the evidence in Nancy Guthrie's case is both promising and, at the same time, deeply frustrating. It is the kind of situation where investigators clearly have something to work with, but what they have has not yet produced the breakthrough that everyone is waiting for. Let's go through it carefully, because the details matter. DNA was recovered from 2 separate locations. The first sample was found on a glove discovered approximately 2 miles from Nancy's home. The second sample was collected from inside Nancy's residence. On the surface, having DNA evidence from 2 locations sounds like a strong foundation for an investigation. But Sheriff Nanos revealed something that complicates the picture significantly. The DNA found on the glove is different from the DNA found inside the home. They do not match each other. That means one of 2 things. Either there were 2 separate individuals involved in the abduction, each leaving their DNA in different locations. Or the glove found 2 miles away has no connection to the crime at all and belongs to someone entirely unrelated who happened to discard it in that area. Both possibilities are being taken seriously by investigators, but neither one has been confirmed publicly. What is known is that both samples were submitted to CODIS, the combined DNA index system maintained by the FBI. CODIS is one of the most powerful tools available to law enforcement in the United States. It contains over 21 million DNA profiles, drawn from convicted offenders, from individuals arrested in states that collect DNA at the point of arrest, from DNA recovered at crime scenes in unsolved cases, and from missing persons and unidentified remains. If your DNA is in that system for any reason and investigators have a sample that matches yours, they will find you. It is a database that has helped solve thousands of cases over the years, and it is typically one of the first places investigators turn when biological evidence is recovered from a crime scene. In Nancy's case, neither DNA sample produced a match. Neither profile corresponds to anyone currently in the system. That is a significant setback, and it tells investigators something specific about who they may be looking for. A person whose DNA is not in CODIS has most likely never been convicted of an offense that requires DNA collection. They have either never been arrested in a state that collects DNA from people taken into custody, or they have simply never had their DNA entered into the system through any other channel. In short, whoever left that DNA behind does not have a known criminal history that would have put them on law. Enforcement's radar through standard database channels. However, former FBI Special Agent John Iannarelli was keen to point out to Fox News that the absence of a CODIS match is not the end of the road. And he is right. Because in recent years, a different approach to DNA identification has changed the game entirely, and it is almost certainly something investigators are now pursuing in this case. The technique is called forensic genetic genealogy, and the clearest way to explain it is to point to the case that brought it to public attention. In the 1970s and 1980s, a man later identified as Joseph DeAngelo carried out dozens of rapes and murders across California. He became known as the Golden State Killer, and for decades he evaded identification entirely. Investigators had his DNA from crime scenes, but it did not match anything in CODIS. He had no criminal record that would have placed him in the system. For years, the case went cold. Then in 2018, investigators tried something different. They uploaded the crime scene DNA profile to GED Match, a publicly accessible genealogy database where ordinary people upload their own DNA results from consumer testing services like 23 and Me and Ancestry in order to find relatives. The idea is straightforward. Even if the suspect's own DNA is not in any law enforcement database, it is possible that a relative of theirs, perhaps a cousin, a sibling, or even a more distant relation, has voluntarily submitted their DNA to one of these genealogy platforms. When that happens, the crime scene DNA will show a partial match to that relative because they share a portion of their genetic material. From there, investigators work backwards. They use those partial matches to begin building family trees, identifying common ancestors, and then tracing the descendants of those ancestors forward through generations. The goal is to narrow down which individuals within those family trees match the suspect's known characteristics, things like age, gender, and geographical location. Once a short list of potential suspects is identified, investigators find ways to collect DNA from those individuals without their knowledge, often from items they have discarded, a coffee cup, a cigarette, or something left behind in a public place. That sample is then tested against the original crime scene DNA, and if it matches, investigators have their suspect. That is exactly how DeAngelo was identified. He was arrested, and he eventually pleaded guilty. This approach has since been used to solve hundreds of cold cases across the United States. It has become one of the most significant developments in criminal investigation in recent decades, and it works precisely because it does not rely on a suspect having any prior criminal history. All it requires is that someone in their extended family has taken a consumer DNA test. Iannarelli suggested to Fox News that once investigators upload the crime scene DNA to genealogical databases, they could potentially see results within 24 to 48 hours. That may be optimistic depending on the complexity of the family trees involved, and constructing those trees accurately can take considerably longer, sometimes weeks. But the point stands that a CODIS dead end does not mean the DNA evidence is useless. Far from it. It simply means investigators may need to take a longer route to get where they are going. While that work is potentially underway, investigators have also been pursuing another line of inquiry that reveals quite a lot about where the case currently stands. Philip Martin, co-owner of Armor Bearer Arms, a gun store in Tucson, told Fox News that an FBI agent came into his store carrying 3 pages of photographs and names representing approximately 18 to 24 individuals. The agent asked Martin to check his store's records to see whether any of those people had purchased a firearm within the past year. Martin went through the records and confirmed that none of the individuals on the list had bought a gun from his store. The significance of this visit should not be understated. The FBI does not compile lists of 18 to 24 named individuals with photographs and take them to gun stores unless those individuals are already considered persons of interest. This is not a broad speculative exercise. This is a targeted inquiry aimed at a specific group of people that investigators have already identified through other means. It tells us that the FBI has, to at least some degree, narrowed the suspect pool. They are not starting from nothing. They have names, they have faces, and they are now building out profiles of those individuals to see what else they can establish. The reason gun purchase records matter in this context is fairly straightforward. If one of the people on that list bought a firearm shortly before Nancy's abduction, that could point to deliberate preparation. It could support the idea that the crime was planned in advance and that the perpetrator took steps to arm themselves ahead of it. If someone on the list is believed to be carrying a weapon but has no legal record of purchasing one, that suggests they may have obtained it through other means. And if someone attempted to purchase a firearm but was denied, that creates a paper trail that investigators can follow. Any of those outcomes would be useful. In this case, none of them applied at that particular store, but the FBI is likely conducting the same checks across multiple firearms retailers in the area. Former FBI Special Agent Stuart Kaplan offered a telling observation to Fox News when he said that when his agency goes dark, when it stops releasing information to the public, it is usually because something is actively happening behind the scenes. In his view, the FBI's silence in this case is not a sign that investigators are stuck. It is a sign that they are moving carefully and deliberately, protecting information that could compromise the investigation or alert a suspect that they are being watched. Kaplan went as far as to say he believes the FBI has one or more persons of interest and is currently working through the analysis. That assessment, coming from someone who knows how the Bureau operates, is worth paying attention to. The absence of public updates does not mean the investigation has stalled. It may mean the opposite entirely. Investigators with a strong lead do not broadcast it. They follow it quietly, gather what they need, and act when the time is right. What the evidence picture looks like right now is this. There is DNA from 2 locations, neither of which has produced a CODIS match, but both of which could still lead somewhere through genealogical analysis. There is a list of nearly 24 persons of interest whose backgrounds are actively being examined, and there is a law enforcement agency that, if former insiders are to be believed, knows more than it is currently saying. The pieces are there. Whether they come together in time is the question that everyone following this case is sitting with. Sheriff Chris Nanos has been in front of cameras multiple times since Nancy Guthrie disappeared. He has answered questions, provided updates, and maintained a composed and professional front throughout. But there is one moment that stands out above the rest, and it is not a press conference statistic or an investigative update. It is a direct appeal spoken plainly to whoever is responsible for taking Nancy from her home. Just let her go, take her to a park, take her to a hospital. It will work out better for you in the long run. Those words carry a lot of weight. When a county sheriff makes a personal appeal of that nature to a suspect, it tells you something about the state of the investigation and about what investigators believe is still possible. The language Nanos used assumes Nancy is alive. It assumes she is being held somewhere and that the person holding her has a choice to make. It is not the language of someone who has given up, but it is also not the language of someone who is entirely confident about what is going to happen next. Nanos has been consistent in framing this as a rescue operation, not a recovery mission. That distinction is deliberate. A recovery mission implies that the outcome is already known and that the goal has shifted to finding remains. A rescue operation means there is still someone to bring home. 400 investigators, according to Nanos, continue to pursue thousands of leads with that belief driving them forward every morning. He told reporters that he is going to hold on to faith and that sometimes hope is all you have, whether that reflects genuine confidence based on information the public has not seen, or whether it is a necessary stance to keep the investigation energized and the public engaged, is something only those closest to the case can answer. There are reasonable arguments on both sides. On one hand, the fact that Nancy was taken rather than harmed at the scene does suggest the perpetrator had a reason to keep her alive. If this is connected to some form of financial motivation, for example, then her being alive has practical value to whoever took her. Investigators may also have information that has not been made public, something that gives them a basis for the optimism Nanos is projecting. Law enforcement routinely withholds details that could compromise an active investigation, and the same former agents who have spoken to Fox News have suggested that the FBI in particular is being very deliberate about what it shares and what it keeps close. On the other hand, Nancy is 84 years old. The physical toll of being forcibly removed from your home, held somewhere unfamiliar, potentially without access to regular medication or proper food, is significant for anyone. For a person of her age, it is especially serious. The longer she remains missing, the more that concern grows. Statistics on abduction cases consistently show that the risk to a victim increases substantially with time and that the first hours and days are the most critical window. That window has long passed. What remains is a combination of hope, investigative momentum, and the possibility that the evidence being worked behind the scenes leads somewhere before it is too late. The community in Tucson is feeling all of this in a very direct way. The Catalina Foothills neighbourhood, where Nancy lived, is home to many elderly residents, a number of whom live alone just as she did. The idea that someone could approach a home in that area in the early hours of the morning, disable a doorbell camera, and take a person without being immediately identified has unsettled people in a way that is hard to overstate. Residents who spoke to reporters described a community that is rattled. People who had never thought to lock their doors are now doing so. People who had raised families in the area and always felt secure are now questioning whether that security was ever as solid as they believed. One resident described Tucson as a tight and close community and said the level of national attention the case has brought is something people there are simply not used to. Another pointed out that many older people in that area live by themselves and that Nancy's disappearance has made that a much more frightening reality than it was before. These are not abstract concerns. For people living in similar circumstances in the same neighbourhood, this case is personal in a way that goes beyond following a news story. Yellow flowers have been placed outside Nancy's home by members of the public, and the same gesture appeared on the set of the NBC Today show, where Savannah Guthrie continues to work. A local florist noted that yellow flowers are traditionally associated with hope and support. It is a quiet, human response to a situation where most people feel helpless, a way of saying something when there is not much else to be done. Former FBI Special Agent Stuart Kaplan has offered what is perhaps the clearest window into what may be happening inside the investigation right now. Speaking to Fox News, Kaplan said that when he sees his agency go quiet, when the flow of public information slows or stops, his experience tells him that something is actively being pursued. In his words, he believes the FBI has a person or persons of interest and is currently working through the analysis. He also pointed to the likelihood that sensitive forensic techniques are being used in this case. Techniques that investigators are deliberately keeping out of public view to protect both the integrity of the investigation and the viability of any future prosecution. What those techniques might include is worth considering. Geofence warrants, for example, allow investigators to request data from technology companies showing which devices were active in a specific geographic area during a specific time window. Cell tower analysis can identify which phones connected to nearby towers around the time of the abduction. Digital forensics on Nancy's own devices could reveal whether she had received any unusual communications or whether someone had been monitoring her prior to February 1st. Financial records can show whether any unusual transactions took place that might be connected to the crime. And as discussed, forensic genetic genealogy may still produce an identification through the DNA evidence already collected. Any one of these avenues, pursued carefully and quietly, could be the thing that breaks this case open. Here is where things stand. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, was forcibly taken from her home in Tucson on the morning of February 1st, 2026. A masked suspect was captured on surveillance footage tampering with her doorbell camera before she disappeared. DNA was recovered from 2 locations, but neither sample matched any profile in the FBI's CODIS database. Forensic genetic genealogy is a likely next step that could still identify the suspect through family connections. The FBI visited at least one local gun store with a list of approximately 18 to 24 named persons of interest, suggesting the suspect pool has been narrowed. No vehicle description has been released to the public. The FBI has been in contact with Mexican authorities, though investigators do not currently believe Nancy was taken across the border. A reward of $100,000 is on the table for anyone with information that leads to Nancy's location or the arrest and conviction of those responsible. And Sheriff Nanos continues to appeal directly to whoever took her, asking them to let her go. This case sits in an uncomfortable place. There is evidence, there are persons of interest, there is a significant law enforcement effort involving hundreds of investigators and the resources of the FBI. And yet Nancy Guthrie remains missing, and no arrest has been made. Former agents who know how the FBI operates are reading the silence, coming from the Bureau as a sign of progress rather than failure. That may be the most accurate read of the situation. It may also be the most hopeful one. What is certain is that every person connected to this case, investigators, family, community members, and the many people following it from a distance, is holding on to the same thing that Sheriff Nanos described when he stood in front of cameras and said that sometimes hope is all we have. For Nancy Guthrie's sake, that hope needs to be enough. And for whoever is responsible, the message from law enforcement is clear. The investigation is not slowing down. The evidence is being worked on, and the people looking for Nancy are not going anywhere.